All right. Well, in Halitics, I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Thursday and had a good day yesterday. Actually, before I get into the, I guess, more conversation, I did a trivia night last night. I used to always enjoy trivia nights, and there's a watering hole near me that I enjoy going to now and again. They have a little brew pub there where they make their own beer, which I always prefer. Always my favorite is to go to a place where they actually make the beer themselves. So I was happy to go I'll even say that no problem saying it, Baby Cat. And I was pretty psyched. I was doing so well. I was close, number 2 with a bullet going into the final round. And I couldn't get those questions. They were just really too tough for me. One was, I'm trying to get this, but while I'm talking, I'm definitely trying to get this on the Facebook, right? So that everything's visible for you. And for some reason, it doesn't seem to want to work. I don't know what the problem is. There's always some issue. But anyway, back to the trivia night. And I was doing so well, like I said, and there was a lot of people. And I thought, well, this is great. I was in the money. Top 4 actually got some consequence, got some some reward, like a little, I guess it was basically a gift certificate. You could use it again. Next time you come, you get a discount or what have you. And I just totally blew the final 2 questions, the final round where you can bet, right? You can bet. And Velvet Revolution, I guess Morocco, totally wrong. And I was mad at myself too, because the question included the hint that the Velvet Revolution occurred in a former country. Obviously, Morocco is a current country. It's not moribund. It hasn't been replaced by something else. The answer, actually, Czechoslovakia was the site of the Velvet Revolution. The other question, which I actually bet, I had no idea. I bet zero points on that, but I thought I had to bet on one of the 2 questions to get into first place. It's kind of like Final Jeopardy, right? You can bet on everything or nothing or somewhere in between. And you decide based on the difficulty of the question to you, whether you think you know it or not, how much to bet. And the second question was, who is credited with the term battery to refer to a power source, right? A power source is a battery. Who was the individual who was credited with that? And, it jumped into my mind, Nikola Tesla, the namesake of the vehicle, the Tesla, the car. And it seemed to make perfect sense, right? Because the Tesla's a battery-powered car. So I was like, it's got to be Tesla, right? It seems so obvious. How could it not be Tesla? And I bet the full 20 points. I figured if I get this right, I could well win. I mean, who's going to know what Velvet Revolution is? And apparently, no one, maybe some people knew what Velvet Revolution was. People got added points. So they must have gotten something right. Nobody guessed, as far as I know, correctly who came up with, who's credited with the term battery, except for one team did get that, but they got 0 points. The host of the trivia night said that only one of the 10 or 12 teams that there were actually got that answer. Who is credited with the term battery? Who came up with it? And that answer is apparently Ben Franklin, not Tesla. Now, I shouldn't have guessed Tesla. In retrospect, I was thinking a lot about it. And the reason I shouldn't have guessed Tesla is because Tesla's Italian. I don't know that he was much of an English speaker. I assumed, since the lingua franca of the scientific community has been English for probably the past few hundred years, at least since probably the middle of the 19th to the late 19th century, right? 1858. Maybe before that, probably the lingua franca was, in fact, could have been French. It really wasn't one for science. But I think since maybe the late 1800s till now, scientists are more likely to communicate in English than any other language. So I don't know that Tesla was a real English speaker, but I figured, well, he probably, with his discoveries, his publications, this is one of the great geniuses, scientific geniuses, may well have used the term battery. But I should have figured No, he's Italian. Probably didn't use the word battery. It must have been somebody who's American or English who first came up with that word. So anyway, finished way out of the money. It was really a disappointment, and I was majorly bummed. But I got to do something. Got to get out of the house. Got to, distract myself, of course, from the news, which is so terrible. And I will watch. Today's the opening of the NFL season. I don't know how much I'll watch, but it's an exciting game. We're seeing the champions, the Eagles, and I'm a Eagles fan, not my favorite team, but I like most of the NFL teams. I don't really have teams I really hate. I used to hate the local team here in Washington for two reasons: the horrible owner and the even more horrible name. But the name has been changed. I don't like the new name at all, but at least it's not a racist. It's not a slur. Commanders isn't good. They should have gone with Red Wolves. I think it seemed like such a no-brainer. I know that was considered, but whatever. They went with Commanders. Horrible name. But the owner's gone. The name isn't a slur, so I'm okay with it. I like the players on the team. Anyway, Washington, I don't hate the team anymore. The game tonight, good game between the Philadelphia Eagles, the national champions right now, the NFL world champions, I guess, versus the Cowboys. And I anticipate a blowout. I think the Eagles will win easily, but of course, any given Sunday, any team could win. Today's program, let me just go back, show you, of course, the slide deck one more time. I put my face on there. I don't know if you like it or not. You can see Double Hal. If you want to comment on that, love to hear what you have to say. And if you want to call in, we always want to hear from you. But centering victimizers, not victims. And I do thank Brianna Joy Gray. Yeah, Double Hals. There you go. See me on the left and on the right of your screen. Brianna Joy Gray with her guest, I think her name is Syed, something of that name, some name like that. She's apparently an Al Jazeera reporter, and she criticized Adam Friedman. I mentioned this yesterday, I believe, who is a podcaster, YouTuber, comedian, comic, very successful. She criticized him to a degree. She wasn't too, aggressive about it, but she felt that he had centered himself in his interview with the truly execrable, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, really just awful person, the horrible man, Richie Torres, and Friedman trying to get Torres to express some, concern for, some empathy towards the victims of the Israeli genocide. And he got none. There was none. We'll play some clips from that. But the criticism was that rather than center the true victims, obviously the Palestinian people, both in Gaza, where the genocide is being carried out most viciously, most cruelly, most murderously, and the West Bank, where we're also seeing very, very high rates of killing by Israel. But rather than center the victims, the Palestinian people, according to Said, Friedland centered Israelis and the Jewish and the feelings of Jewish people. And she criticized him for that. I think that criticism is a little unfair. I don't think it's nearly as unfair when we're looking at an article that Thomas Friedman wrote for the New York Times last month. And even there, it was not there were many aspects of the Friedman article that I'm going to nitpick, but I'm still glad it's in the paper. On balance, it was better than not being there, which isn't always the case for a lot of their articles. Certainly anything by Bret Stephens would be best left in the dark, would be best kept off every page in that newspaper. But in this case, Friedman's post was better than nothing, but there were definitely left something to be desired. The situation in Gaza is as awful as it's been. It just keeps getting worse and worse. What Israel's doing is so cruel, so horrific. We have to talk about it. It is the crime of the millennium, but it's painful. It's very, very painful. I think that's what Friedland was getting at. I don't think he was centering Jews, saying they're more important, that it's the feelings of Jews that matter. I don't think that's what he was saying, and that's why I felt it was a little unfair. I do think that's to a significant degree what Friedman is saying, and that's why I'm more critical of Friedman. Death toll today up over 500 since yesterday. Apparently, there weren't 500 people killed by Israel yesterday. The number is identified as about 84, but many bodies recovered in the rubble. And we talk about this, pretty much every day as well, that when you can see the incredible devastation there at the bottom, just the bombing. This is the tents, the buildings that have been completely blown out. And that's a picture there from Anadolu Ajansi, Dayline, 4th day of September 25, and many starving as well. Israel, just as bad as it can be, just as bad as any country can be. And I don't know. I don't know where else to go with that. It's just so horrible. If you look at today's thumbnail, you can see as well, just in the background. And I think that's part of the reason we call it centering the victimizers, not victims, is even that image. Now, I'm not blaming it on Friedman. I don't know that he probably didn't put it, he's not like me. He's not like does everything but toast bread. He's about writing his columns. But you can see, and I put a lot of stuff in there. It's a little busy. But the soldiers, the Israeli military, are in the front, and then in the back is just the rubble that the soldiers, they've reduced Gaza to. So again, that's why we're saying centering the victimizers, the soldiers, the military, Israel itself, the country, the nation, the leadership there. Their reaction to their feelings about the costs to them of their crime is seemingly more important than the actual victims of that crime. And so that's why we're critical of it. But the crime is described in pretty lurid terms, and I do give Friedman credit for that. All right. Always ask you, please. I love the comments. I am getting comments. There's a rant on. Is he responding to me? Oh, yeah, that was it. So there's this guy, before we get to it, I just want to say a comment. This guy, David Gerald, apparently he's some sort of a Hollywood person. I don't know if it was what show he was connected to. Maybe it was Star Trek. I don't think so, or I'm not sure. Anyway, he has this long piece out where he attacks progressives. Well, not really even progressives, leftists, people like myself, people who talk about the importance of voting for the Green Party, the sinister nature, the diabolical nature of the Democrat Party. It's how corrupt it is, how it basically has chased the Republican Party right for the past 45 years, if not more. And Gerald says, you have to vote for Kamala Harris. You have to vote for Gavin Newsom. You have to vote for whoever the Democrat is running in every race. And Gerald, mentioned he's Hollywood, California. I think he's saying, if Kamala runs, you have to vote for her. If Schiff runs, if she runs for governor, whoever it is, you vote for them. You may not like them. They may not be your first choice. It doesn't matter. So I said, hey, there is a good choice. You don't have to hold your nose and vote for the bad candidate when there's a really good one in California. His name is Butch Ware. He's running as a Green. So, take your lesser of evils, vote blue no matter who, and shove it right where the sun don't shine, Gerald. We don't need your crap here. Go away, please. And his response to me was, rant on. When I say there's a great candidate, there's no excuse for not supporting him. Rant on. So, just please stop. Just stop. You're responsible for so much of the harm in this world, the vote blue, no matter who crowd. And one other point we'll get to, I just want to get to before we get into some of the more substantive issues. And yeah, don't forget also, please do subscribe. You got to subscribe. I mean, that's what I need you to do more than anything. Subscribe, click the bell, whatever. But subscribe, comment. That's how we get past the algorithm with content that a lot of people don't want to see. They don't want to know about. They don't want it on social media, and that's unfortunate. But it can be beaten. We can beat it if you share, comment, like, what have you, interact, and then call me 240-242-5646, 240-242-5 5646 right there on the screen. Yeah, just real quick on Butch Ware. I don't, there's a lot of things about Butch Ware. I think he does center way too much the identity politics. This is going to cost him, but in the end, he's the candidate running in California for governor who's focused on, who is going to do whatever he can to redress, to a degree, the extraordinarily unfair, unjust distribution of wealth, the obscene salaries that the Silicon Valley tech titans command, and even more than their salaries, the stock options, the valuations of their companies versus the people who say serve them in restaurants and who repair their cars. Actually, the car repair people probably make a decent living, but so many people don't. So, Butch Ware is going to try to change that if he's elected, and that's why I would vote for him. Nobody else will in that race, is my belief. I hope Zoran will if he wins in New York, and I think he will. All right, let's get back. I think I told you 64,200 killed. Now the new toll, it's higher than that. And again, that is a significant upwards revision because of the discovery of new bodies. And we talk about this all the time. The count is always an undercount. It really shows you just how reliable and conservative the health ministry in Gaza is. And when you contrast that to the endless stream of lies, of propaganda, of Hasbara from Israel, the constant explanations, excuses, justifications for the completely unjustifiable mass murder that they're committing. Again, it, I think, points out that the decency, to the extent there's decency in war, in this conflict, which is really more just slaughter of it by Israel of Palestine, Hamas has far more is far more credible and ultimately less immoral by far than Israel. And I understand October 7. Yes, it was wrong. They shouldn't have gone into that Nova music festival and killed a lot of innocent people. They also killed police. They also killed soldiers. I don't cotton to that either. I don't like people being killed. But you can't separate that from the 75 years of oppression, persecution, torture, rape, and murder, land theft by Israel. All right, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. A statement from the Gaza Health Ministry today: 84 bodies were brought to hospitals in the last 24 hours, 338 injured. All right. The toll surged after the names of 401 victims were added to the registry. So these were newly discovered, newly identified victims of the Israeli Holocaust. The number now 485, higher today than we reported yesterday. And we do see just unfathomable, really. I mean, we can fathom it because this is what humans do to each other. This is one of the things we do. We love and we treat each other with kindness, respect, generosity, and we also kill and steal and are sadistic. I mean, that's just the human experience, right? 63,231 Gazans now, 84 additional Palestinians killed yesterday. I think I got that number wrong. 64,000. 64. Did not correct that. 64,231 Gazans killed. Identifiable. 84 yesterday and 11,699 since Trump took office. So, I mean, you know, you're speechless, really. I mean, I'm never speechless, but you run out of words. If you want to join me, would love to talk to you. I love getting the calls. It really helps, I think, makes the show better. So if you want to join me, 240-242-5646. And looking at the chat, not seeing anything. Got a nice comment yesterday early in the show from our friend in, I think, California, Katerina. Maybe she's here. I'm not sure. Katerina, I apologize if I have you in the wrong place, but I'm definitely associating you with Monterey. That's where you are. All right, let's get to our main stories, and we're going to revisit briefly before we get to the question of centering victims versus victimizers and who's doing which. Just get back to Taylor Lorenz, who really started a S-storm on the internet. Nobody's more interested in the podcasting business, the podcasting industry, than other podcasters, obviously. So YouTube, TikTok, the whole 9 yards are just filled with videos responding and various, with various reactions to Taylor Lorenz. Some are loving her, some are hating her, some are in between. I think she did a really important service. I think it's really important that we know that, many videos are being paid by some shadowy group or shadowy groups, individuals. I mean, I think we kind of suspected this either. Anyway, certainly this happens on the right. She pointed to an example of Democratic, I won't say leftist, Democratic influencers getting money from who knows whom, with some strings attached. And it seems pretty clear that the main intention, the main guardrails that are put up if you take that money on either side of you are you don't attack Democrats from the left, and you do attack the leftist who are critical of Democrats. It seems pretty clear that that's the main guardrail, although, to be very, very fair, and Taylor Lorenz never said that you couldn't criticize Israel if you take the money. She never said you have to be a Zionazi Democrat. She never said that, although there's implications in some of her posts, and many on the internet have speculated. I believe I did as well. I'm not even sure. I couldn't find it. I looked at yesterday's program. Many of us have speculated. If I didn't say it, I thought it, that the money in part is money to keep content creators from criticizing Israel, from going after Israel. One recipient, at least one, Heidi Torres, who is part of the Chorus group and is getting something from Chorus, unclear how much, has been very critical of Israel and has posted on many different forums that Israel is, especially on Instagram where she has a following, that Israel is genocidal. So there is an example of a Chorus member who does receive some funding who has been outspoken against Israel. So that's a good thing. That said, Taylor Lorenz makes the point, well, okay, there's one, maybe there's two, but the vast majority, the most high profile people, the people I actually mentioned in my article, especially Pacman and Brian Tyler Cohen, who's the founder, one of the co-founders of the group, they are very unwilling to criticize Israel, except in the most general terms, and they don't call Israel out. So I think she has the better argument. Yeah, you found one influencer. Maybe that influencer was chosen in part because the group said, hey, we've got to have somebody. So if we have 90 influencers that we're giving stipends to, at least one, maybe two, have to be critical of Israel, given the fact that 92% of Democrats, and they're the ones we're reaching out, they're the ones that are going to be our core audience, 92% oppose the support for Israel in the U.S. government by both parties, a bipartisan support, 92%.
So if we have 2 out of 90 who are on the same side as that 98%, yeah, I guess we got to do that. We'll see. We don't know. I thought Taylor Lorenz did a really nice job. I was very impressed with this piece. I'm sure she couldn't care less what I think, but it was well done. It was well researched. It was clearly accurate. No one's challenged the essential points that she's made. And the argument, well, hey, I'm a pro-Palestine influencer, but that Heidi Torres has made, and she said in very nasty terms to it, Taylor, I'm a pro-Palestine influencer, and you said there aren't going to be any who get money. Taylor Lorenz said, hey, I never said that. That's not true. Point to where I said that in the article. I never said that. I speculated that, being pro-Palestine would make it harder, that there was, probably some unspoken objection to funding a bunch of anti-Zionists, but I never said there were not, and I never made that point. So I think Taylor Lorenz really did an outstanding job. I want to play this clip. This is more criticism here, going back to breaking points. And yesterday, I did play a clip by Crystal Ball and a little bit of Sagar where they talked about their problems with Brian Tyler Cohen. And I agree with it. They were right. It's awful. His excuses, his explanations are awful. But there's a certain self-satisfaction, a certain self-righteousness and arrogance that they display that really Taylor Lorenz doesn't. That especially that Crystal Ball displays. I think it's unjustified. I pointed out yesterday that they're not even getting the chorus money, and that she and her husband, Kulinski, have certainly towed to a significant degree the Democratic Party establishment line, saying, well, even if you don't like Democrats, even if you have problems with this policy and that policy, you still have to vote for Kamala. Joe Biden is so great. He's 1,000 times better than Trump, was something that Kulinski said. And, that's just a load of crap. So here's Crystal Ball, just a little bit more, I thought was kind of condescending.
Of dollars. And so for people to say no to that, you got to have some real stomach to actually be able to do it. Or bet
so what Sagar's saying before we get to Crystal Ball is, hey, and I think I played part of this yesterday, is the money's really attractive, even if it's not that much money. For a lot of these influencers, it's really hard to say no. And I agree with that 100%. The problem is the transparency. The problem is that people are desperate in this country, in this society, just to have enough to survive. So people will sell their souls. People will make all kinds of excuses. They will rationalize, well, it's really, maybe I won't talk as much about the Democratic Party's failure to enact Medicare for all. It won't even consider it. But but that way my message will get out more, and I can, talk more about how bad Trump is, and he is really bad. So people will come up with any explanation, any justification. They want that money, and who can blame them? They want the fame that might come to them. Life is tough right now. It's extremely tough to make a living as an influencer on the internet. A few people hit the jackpot. You're looking at one of them. Most of us don't. I'm just very fortunate. I don't need the money. I mean, I'm in a different place than most people, and I'm very, very lucky. But I get it. I get that it's hard to say no to that. And I don't want to be too critical of the creators. I am extremely critical of Brian Tyler Cohen, the co-founder of this, who's, raised money from shadowy sources. We don't know who they are, partly by enticing them with the pitch. No one's going to know you're funding us. No one's going to know about the messages that we're going to be promoting at our daily meetings. And a few people may go off half-cocked and say some things you don't like, but by and large, our message will be stronger. Our pro-Democrat message will be much stronger than any, nitpicking and negativity by a few, by one or two of the people we fund. So that I have a huge problem with. Be open, as they're saying, hey, be transparent. Say, this is the money. This is how much we're giving. And we want this to be said. This is the conditions. But they're not doing that. That's the problem. That's the complete absence of any even publication, even any information given to the consumer, to the news consumer, that
the influence of the influencer has been peddled, has been sold
in a different way and be true to some different values. So anyway, I think that's why it's important, because that's a view into how it works for everything. I really do think it's everything.
Yeah, and I just got to say, for the people who sold out for this shit for $250 a month,
I know, that's
what are you doing with your life?
That's actually,
I mean, it's so condescending. Oh, I do $250. You know, for some people, that $250 could absolutely mean the difference between being able to pay the rent and not. It might mean the difference between paying your cell phone bill. I think that's just so condescending for her to make that point. Oh, well, you just took it for $250. I will not condemn. Depends, right? I mean, if you've got several million subs like a David Pacman, no, that's not okay. What you did, you didn't need the money. You're not even close. You are privileged. You are elite, at least economically. And I know I said, hey, 1 million subs is 100,000. He's got 3 million subs, 300,000. Probably it's a lot more. Again, when you look at the mugs and the bumper stickers and whatever else he's selling, the coasters, the T-shirts. So for Crystal Ball to say, well, 250, it's really it's really off-putting, right? It's not. She's not able to see what it's like for these content creators, and really the argument that I make again is we don't want to be lied to. We don't want people telling us something and pretending that they sincerely believe it when they're getting paid by somebody who will profit if we believe what they're telling us. So that's the issue. And I don't like it when people take that money. I don't like the strings attached, but I understand why it happened. All right, let's get to, and Sagar seemed a lot more kind of understanding as well when he said, hey, it's hard to say no. And that's our society, right? Everyone's on the take. It corrupts all of us. We're all, life, look, to live is to kill. So just being alive, we're corrupted to a degree. So it's always a matter of that degree. And this society we live in, profoundly unjust, profoundly unequal, a winner take all, loser sleeps under a bridge. That's going to corrupt you more than anything else. Here's the Vanguard boys. Now you look, they're doing well. I mean, they've got 117,000 subscribers. I've got 378 or 387 or some tiny little number, nothing. That's a good number. There are very, very few people online who have that many. I'm sure it's well under 1% of the content creators. And I told you 100,000, 1 million subscribers is $100,000. They're probably getting a little more than that. I want to play this because I think it kind of tells you, and I'm not a fan. I don't love the Vanguard. They're way too corporatist. They're way too, let me say this, Democrat establishment, Democrat aligned for me. They make excuses for the Democratic Party. They were very, very critical of Cenk when he criticized mainstream Democrats for not talking to MAGA. He said we have to talk to them. We have their policies that we can reach them. Of course, he's right. Vanguard criticized him for that. Vanguard is very woke in a way that I find off-putting. So again, I'm not a fan, but they do have Taylor Lorenz on. They do take the right position with respect to her. And I thought this was a really important little snippet in response to Crystal Ball's condescending. Well, if you take $250 a month, I don't know what the hell you're thinking.
He's crossed the line for defamation many times over. And I'm not a billionaire. I'm not a multimillionaire living in a, massive Bel Air mansion in a gated community. Once again, I'm a freelance journalist just trying to cobble together a living off Substack and Patreon and my YouTube, which I started literally last year.
Yeah, that's another important thing. I feel like because we all swim, and Gavin and I have at least some sort of a familiarity with this, because you all swim in the same ecosystem, and sometimes we'll have a video clip that does 100K, and it's wow, that's a good clip. You guys did a great job. You guys and all of these other rich content creators, and it's bro, I was a bartender shaking martinis over the summer. Okay, I am not rich.
All right, so that was what I thought was, wow, that's pretty honest, right? I mean, I assume it's true. He could be making that crap up. I don't know. He's saying, look, we got 100,000 plus subscribers. We have videos sometimes that get 100,000 views. And I have to bartend. You know, I have to do a little extra work, you know, which is really hard to do. And their videos are pretty well produced. They do a lot of them. You know, I do one a day. I feel like that's a lot. It's a lot of work to produce these. They do more than that now. Theirs are shorter, but that takes a lot of work too, because you got to cut them up. You got to do the editing. So these guys, they're working their butts off as far as I can tell. Their product is pretty high quality. I don't agree with their take, again, their stance I often take issue with, but they're professional and they are doing well. And one of the guys is bartending. So this idea that you can be Simon Pure and not take the money, I think isn't realistic. But if you're going to give money to content creators, let's make sure we know what they're getting and how much and why. And Taylor Lorenz told us. So we know she's struggling. She's telling us how, why, what. She's showing the receipts. That's all. I think that's very, very reasonable. All right. We spent a lot of time on that story, but I really wanted to continue it because I think it's so important. I think it's, we all look at CNN. I think we all look at NYT. We all look at MSNBC, and we realize these are very deeply flawed institutions. They're corrupt. But we also need to understand that the YouTube, the so-called independent media, also may well be corrupted, and in some ways even worse. You watch CNN, you see some sort of public service announcement from the petroleum industry or from Big Pharma. You're like, all right, well, people don't think about it. They really don't recognize how much propaganda is in their daily newspaper, how much is paid info, right? Infomercials. We don't do that. We don't discount stories significantly enough, even when we know that they're bought and paid for by interested parties. But at least we know, right? At least we can see, if you're watching CNN, that there's an ad run by Chevron telling you how it's, building the rainforest, rebuilding it. And we know they're full of crap. We may not recognize that the story that they're underwriting is pure propaganda, but at least we can sort of sense. But if you're watching a content creator like a David Pakman and he's telling you, well, Israel's, everyone always gangs up on poor Israel. What's going on there? Is he getting some money from some group that doesn't want him to talk about Israel or criticize Israel, or isn't he? He hasn't interviewed Mamdani. Does he really just not that interested in Mamdani, or does he have to run it by somebody? We don't know, right? We don't know, and that's the problem. All right, let me play this clip. This is, I believe, I don't know if she's Palestinian, the journalist with Brianna Joy Gray, and she has some issue with Adam Friedman, and then we're going to play Friedman. But let me start with this because I think it sort of sets the table for the criticism that some, not most, but some have leveled at Friedman.
And are discussing, it's a slew of things that they're discussing, but it's obviously about like Jewish identity, Israel, a little bit about Palestine. It's very little, and I'm going to talk about that. And just kind of, it's very classic Friedman too, but and Torah is just so incredibly soulless. It's remarkable to witness, really.
Well, that's true. He's horrible. And I think the fact that he comes across as so soulless actually shows you some of the value of Friedman's clips. And we'll play that Friedman show. I started with that because I wanted you to hear the criticism, which is basically, she's saying, rather than talking about, the hundreds of thousands of dead Gazans at the hands of Israel, rather than talking about the stolen land daily taken from Palestinians on the West Bank, Friedman's talking about his own feelings. And she has a problem with that. I don't think that's really fair. I'm going to play the clip. several clips to explain why I think that what Adam Friedman did was valuable, and I think he could have done a better job. But, you know, he's who he is. He's going to tell you how he reacts to the information that he gleans from observation.
Okay. I think hatred of Jewish people has exploded in this country.
So here's where you start. So he's talking about anti-Semitism, and I think he gets it wrong. He says hatred of Jewish people has exploded. I don't think that's, we've been through this a million times. There's no evidence to support that theory. The ADL is the only source, as far as I know, that's tried to compile or that's presented compilations of crimes against Jews because they're Jewish, and they've been completely discredited. There's no legitimacy. The examples that are provided are invariable, or almost invariably, of people who are targeted or attacked because they express pro-Israel sentiments. They express Zionist sympathies, not because they're Jewish. So that's not anti-Semitism. So I think here, yeah, it's fair. Okay, he's talking about anti-Semitism, but he's also going to explain why he believes it's on the rise.
And I think it's because it's of our support of what looks to be an absolute brutality. And I think that
you think that's a justification.
So that's a really, that's a really important issue. He's saying, hey, yeah, people don't like the fact that we're supporting what he calls a brutality. I think later on he calls it a genocide. And that's a really important thing to say. And I don't think that's just centering his own feelings. He's explaining why there's been, he believes, not in fact reality, but he believes he's going to accept the premise that anti-Semitism is on the rise. Let me play this again, because Torres' response is so blank, so dead-eyed, so soulless, as the Palestinian, or I shouldn't say Al Jazeera journalist says.
Of what looks to be an absolute brutality. And I think that
you think that's a justification for anti-Semitism.
So listen to that. You think that's a justification? He's explaining, you jackass. He's explaining why there's increased anti-Semitism, which there is, and I don't believe that's true. But if you want to believe that, he's saying, well, if the Jewish state is going to be murdering tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of people, yeah, people are going to be mad at Jews. That's right.
Okay. I think hatred of Jewish people has exploded in this country. And I think it's because it's of our support of what looks to be an absolute brutality. And I think that
you think that's a justification for anti-Semitism.
Here's the thing:
you think Israel?
I mean, it's such an ass. He's such an ass, a butthole. It's an explanation for why there's a lot of anger at those Jews who support Israel and at anyone who supports Israel. It's an explanation for it. I mean, this whole idea of justification, sometimes we react in ways that are just, other ways we don't. But if you care, if you're going to center Jewish people, as apparently Torres is, I think he says he feels like he's an honorary Jew or something. I guess he got paid enough to feel that way. If you're going to center the experience of Jewish people, then presumably you care about what's happening to them. And if there is an upsurge in anti-Semitism, well, why? If the reason, as Adam Friedman says, is because Jews are committing a genocide and a lot of Jews are supporting them, well, why don't you stop the genocide, right? I mean, if you don't want to be hated, then do the right thing. It may not be a justification, but since there's an easy fix, that's also, by the way, the right thing to do it. Stop killing people. It's plain and simple. Your crime is a hell of a lot worse than somebody's thought crime against you because you might be Jewish.
It's a justification for anti-Semitism. My view is there's no justification for anti-Semitism.
I think that...
So he's like, full stop, there's no justification, so we're not going to have a conversation about this. There's no point. That's centering the Jewish experience. That's what Richie Torres is doing. He's saying, hey, it's not okay to hate Jews, period, under any circumstances. It's just not. There's no justification for it, which may be true. But because of that, because there's no justification for it, and because at least some of those who are protesting Israel's treatment, mistreatment, abuse of murders, at least some of those people probably really hate Jews, we don't have to talk about it because they shouldn't hate Jews. So, that's the end of it. There's no point in even talking about Israel because people hate Jews. That's what he's doing. He's using this to completely avoid a reckoning of genocide.
Okay, you're deflecting again.
I'm not deflecting. That's my position.
He's like, I'm not deflecting. That's my position. Okay, that can be your position, but you are also deflecting. It's disgusting. It's Torres, not Adam, in this sequence, who is centering only Jews without any consideration of the victims of the Jewish state. All right, let's play a little more. So here's where I think Friedman really does just the opposite of what the journalist claims. He completely centers the Israel's victims.
Understanding in our community is that we have to defend Israel. But I lived there, and I went to a settlement at the end of my year there, and I looked down a hill at a Palestinian village, and I saw how they lived, and I turned back and I looked at the settlement and saw how they lived. And people live in a world where they're demeaned and dehumanized and surveilled constantly by people.
So he's saying, you hear it. He's saying, my feelings are what matter in this conversation, or at least that's what I'm discussing. But I'm discussing my feelings when I observed people being dehumanized, people living in fear under constant surveillance. In other words, his feelings are based on how other people are being mistreated. He's not worried about himself. He's saying, this is my reaction to terrible persecution and oppression by my own people. I'm centering the victims, the victims of my people, and how bad it is. That's not inappropriate. That is appropriate. He's exactly right, is Friedman there. And there's nothing, I think, to criticize about it.
And this isn't in Gaza, by people in SWAT team outfits with semi-automatic weapons, and that's what the world is seeing. And you keep telling me that the problem is someone's getting yelled at a restaurant? I'm sorry.
You're conflating two different issues.
So he's saying, see, it's so awful. Richie Torres is so evil. He's so monstrous. You can't, I think Friedman's trying to get him to acknowledge some empathy for, some sympathy, some concern for another group of people. And he won't do it. But I think that Friedman's conducting this part of the interview quite well. I don't have a problem with it. I don't know. I do have a problem with him conceding the point about rising anti-Semitism. I don't buy it. I don't accept that. All right. I have one more clip where I do have a problem with what Friedman did. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's exactly centering victims, but he's trying to buddy up Torres a little bit. This is early on. He's buttering him up a little bit. But I also want to play this because Friedman says something that I've said many times. And I think it's worth saying it again.
You know how you join is when you're a baby.
Yeah.
So they're smiling, they're laughing, and he's talking about, being Jewish and what the rituals are. And Torres is snickering because he, I guess, knows what's coming.
And then this old wizard walks in, and then he pulls your diaper off.
Yeah.
And then your whole family looks at your beautiful baby penis, and then he cuts the part that I guess gives one pleasure later on in life and during sex, and then there's a deli tray there and stuff. That's how you join the club.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is correct. And he's trying to like buddy up with him. And I understand the reason for doing that, right? You want to see, is there humanity? Can we kind of connect on some level? But Torres's record is so bad, and all the money he takes from AIPAC. I don't know. I mean, I can see the purpose of this. You do sort of wonder why have him on. You know, again, what's the value? You know, Crystal Ball had Elisa Slotnick on from Michigan, and I guess there was a little bit of compassion raised, but they always bring it up in the same kind of fashion, which is, well, if Hamas would just give up, if Hamas this, it's always Hamas's fault. Yeah, maybe there's some excesses by Israel, which Torres won't even acknowledge. I don't know what you do, because it really is, these are soulless, immoral people. They're evil people. And you kind of, just interacting with them, you lose. But on the other hand, you have no choice. One thing I would say about Friedman's little vignette there about circumcision, we didn't have brisses. Like, my sons were not circumcised. I thought the way he described it is accurate as I understand it. I think it's wrong. It's just totally wrong. And I was kind of pleased just to hear him say it. I've talked about this on other programs, maybe not recently. I don't think it's fair to say that Adam Friedman centered Jewish feelings. I think he centered the experience of the victims of Israel and reacted to his feelings to them. I think that's very different from what our friend Tom Friedman does in the New York Times. And you can see it, because here Friedman is saying Israel's a victim here, right? Israel's Gaza campaign is making it a pariah state. He's centering Israel's losses. But that's not what Friedland did. Friedland said, hey, you want to talk about anti-Semitism? Fine. The reason is these terrible crimes that Israel's doing, that Israel's committing. Israel's doing really, really awful things, and therefore people are mad at Israel. People are angry, and people are mad at Jews. That's a little different than what Friedman does, at least in this cover. He's saying, no, yeah, whatever we look at, the main problem here, because Friedland isn't saying it's anti-Semitism. Friedland's saying the main problem is what's happening in Gaza. And he even points out, he says, hey, you tell me about someone at a restaurant who gets yelled at. That's nothing. That's nothing compared to what I've seen. But Friedman's saying, no, the real problem is Israel's a pariah state. But even there, I don't want to be unfair. Friedman does provide some really important information to readers in the New York Times who are absolutely bound and determined to excuse Israel, to provide justification for everything Israel does, and to blame everything that Israel does on Hamas. But he starts out badly, right? He doesn't, his first thing is he's not going to call it a genocide. He'll leave it to historians. We don't need to leave. It's happening. We all see it. Historians aren't going to know any more than you. You know more than, you've been to Israel a million times, Friedman. You know exactly what the, you know better than any historian could know, frankly, what's happening in Israel. You're about the world's biggest expert on Israel. So for you to say you'll leave it to historians is it's disingenuous. It's as though, well, maybe there's stuff we don't know about. You've seen it all. And if you read the actual, and we're going to go through this with some detail, what Friedman has to say, he knows it's a genocide. He just doesn't want to say it. By the way, again, I'd love to hear from you, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. Did not get a lot of viewers yesterday. I really don't understand. I thought it was a good video. But we did get some nice comments, and I think people do watch often after the fact. So what Friedman Friedland. There's confusing. Adam Friedland is the one who interviewed Torres. Tom Friedman is the one who wrote the article. He's the columnist at the New York Times. Look at this. I don't know whether Israel is committing genocide. I don't know. But what I do know is that Israel is committing suicide. So the first act that he's talking about is hurting itself, right? That's the most important. The primary problem here is Israel's committing suicide, not that it's committing genocide, which I'm not even sure they're doing. But then he does use the term homicide, and he uses the term fratricide, which I think he says they're, brothers, right? You're killing your brother. So I think he means the Jewish community. Israel is destroying, Netanyahu is destroying these Jewish communities around the world by Israel's actions. Again, centering, not centering the real victims, which is the Palestinian people. It's a real problem. But look, if you're a Zionist, if you're a Zion-Nazi, and there are many, right, who also do look at the New York Times as the be all and end all, the decider, right? All the news that's fit to print. If it's in the New York Times, it happened. If it isn't, it never happened. So, and a great example of how pernicious that attitude is, the New York Times still hasn't told you about the town hall that where Wes Bell in St. Louis heard from his constituents tremendous amount of anger, rage at his unqualified support for the genocidal Jewish state, and his reaction, sicking police and shoving around and brutalizing small people, little people, a small woman, a 90-pound woman by a big, monstrous security. So that's what happened, and the New York Times never told you about it. So it's important that Thomas Friedman talked about this in the pages of the New York Times. But he does center Israel. The first thing, it's destroying Israel's standing in the world, which is not nearly as important as the fact that Israel's killing Gaza civilians with not just seemingly no regard, with no regard for innocent human life. It's also, as he says, tearing apart Israeli society and world Jewry. I don't know. That's for Israeli society and world Jewry to decide. If you want to side with Israel, then you're the responsible for the disintegration of Jewish and Israeli life to the extent that they're dependent on some kind of shared consensus on Israel. Then you have to break with Israel. If you care about those things, Jewish culture, Jewish society, if you care about those things and you believe they're to a degree dependent on a consensus on Israel, then we need to change that consensus. And he points out there's a break now between Jews who want to stand with Israel no matter what, and those who can no longer tolerate, explain, or justify for this Israeli government is taking the Jewish state and who want to distance themselves from it. And it sort of sounds like Friedman is kind of the one who's now in the second group. He's always been pretty pro-Israel, but now he looks at what's happening saying, yeah, I can't really justify this. And he gives you a lot of really specific actions by Israel that show just how, again, sinister it is, how evil it is. And he, like, I guess, Friedland, he accepts the claim, the premise that anti-Semitism is on the rise. I reject that. I don't believe it is. But he gives some examples that he thinks support that premise and does blame Israel for it, which is at least honest. It's devious and sinister when you use your military to move hundreds of thousands of Gazan civilians from one part of Gaza to the other. And while they're in one place, you bulldoze their homes for no military reason. You're just trying to make them leave. You want to make life so miserable that they leave. And then you stop and start humanitarian aid with the hope that people will get hungry enough to leave, not just hungry to kill them. But he also said, and then he says it's not just homicide. So he's saying it's also deliberately killing them. what he's describing is genocide, certainly ethnic cleansing, that's considered genocide. He says that this is all conspiring, these actions are making the world hate Israel. And now Israelis have to think twice before they even speak Hebrew when traveling abroad. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens. You know, I don't know that Germans during World War II were too happy to be part of Germany. In fact, I think a lot of Germans even said, I'm embarrassed to be German at this point. It's a shame. It's shameful. And I think that's kind of how you should feel as an Israeli. I mean, it's, you know, innate, right? You can't help it. It's not your fault if you're born in Israel or you're Israeli. It's not your fault. But to a degree, yeah, we are. There is association, and if your country is doing terrible, terrible things, you kind of do have an obligation to distance yourself from it. I believe it's at some point it's incumbent on you, if you're Israeli, if people know you're Israeli, to say, yeah, it's terrible. It's just wrong. It's immoral. It's a crime what we're doing. And here it's so weird because first Friedman describes terrible crimes by Israel, bulldozing people's homes, cutting humanitarian aid, trying to just force people to leave. He calls it homicide. And then he says, it's unfair, though, says the Israeli government. What about what Hamas did? 1,200 people they murdered, kidnapped 250, including women, children, and the elderly. And Hamas's leadership could have ended all of this suffering by agreeing to quit Gaza and release its hostages. And it's even Hamas is even causing its own people to die as they're sacrificed to Hamas's mad dreams. Well, Hamas's mad dream is that there be one state, right? That there be self-determination for its people. Is that a mad dream? Isn't that what the UN, the Charter of the United States that, you know, we believe in? Is not what we fought a revolution for, so that we could control our own destiny? We weren't being directed by some foreign king, foreign potentate. Well, I don't know that I call that a mad dream, but yet Friedman says, well, it's all true. It isn't fair to Israel. Israel was the victim here. No. Stop it. No. And to claim that Hamas's leadership could end all this by agreeing to quit Gaza and release the hostages is clearly false. Clearly a lie. Hamas has repeatedly said it would release the hostages. It just wants this to end. They want a commitment to by Israel to stop killing, to stop restarting the war whenever it feels like it, to stop restarting its war on the Palestinian people, its war against the Palestinians. That's all that Hamas is saying. It's utterly reasonable. They're saying, hey, we put down our arms, we've freed the hostages. Who's going to stop you in a week from coming back and finalizing your solution? So, you know, I don't know what Hamas is supposed to do at this point. There's nothing. And the times of Israel. So, but yet, and again, this is just flat out untrue. I'm going to put it up again because Friedman gets it so wrong. And it's very harmful. It's because even though he accurately describes Israel's crimes, he gives the power to end Israel's crimes to Hamas, which is false. Hamas's leadership could have ended all this by agreeing to quit Gaza and release all its hostages. It's all true, he says in blue. It's all true. It's not true. That's a lie. And you need to go just to the pages. I mean, you don't have to go very far. It's right there in the Times of Israel. Dateline, and I've talked about this before, Dateline February 17. Hamas leadership said, we'll go, we'll leave, just stop killing our people. Please just stop killing our people. That's all we're asking for. That's in the Times of Israel. They February 17th, this year. And Netanyahu says, forget it. No, we're not ever going to stop killing you. It's extraordinary. Hamas said to agree to cede Gaza governance to PA, Palestinian Authority. Not going to happen. Committed to Trump's Gaza plan. At that point, it was, Palestine on the Riviera, right? Or the Riviera in Palestine, or whatever it was, right on the Mediterranean. Hebrew media says Ramallah's pay to slay stipends to terrorists ongoing. That's a different issue. So, and of course, the Times has to put that in. It has to put down whatever it can to slam Hamas when it has this headline that so clearly is a full-scale indictment of Netanyahu. Hamas says, we're going to give up power. Just stop killing us. Please. And Netanyahu says, nope, it's not going to happen. That's the Israeli media. But Tom Friedman, nope, he knows better. He knows better. Israel would, if only Hamas would just stop, release the hostages, this would all end. Not true. And it is relevant that it's not true. So this is centering, again, Israel. This is not centering the victims of Israel. And he's just wrong to do that. And yet, as bad as that part of this article, this opinion piece is, as dishonest as it is, there's value to it because he does describe in pretty clear terms how awful Israel is, how cruel, how evil. There's more. I don't feel like getting into all of it. He refuses to call out the true corruption of the Democratic Party, instead claiming that they're afraid to defy AIPAC because they might lose funding to the Republican. And that kind of is, it's true in a way. Yeah, we don't want to lose the funding we're getting. We could lose the Republicans, but it's centering the politicians, not centering the crime that they're committing because they're bound and determined to stay in power. That's the real problem, not Adam Friedland describing how, as a Jew, he feels when he sees cruelty, murder, sadism, land theft, and worse. All right. Well, I still haven't gotten to my chess champion in France. I do want to talk about that story. Tomorrow is the free-for-all, so maybe we'll get to it there. Also want to kind of take a little bit of a shot at Nathan J. Robinson from Current Affairs. We've sometimes praised him, but I think he deserves a little criticism as well. So hopefully I'll get to those tomorrow. Thank you so much for being part of Halitics. Yeah, I also want to, Robinson, that was, because the problem with Robinson, just I'll center that real quick or I'll explain, is he is somewhat, I don't want to say fawning exactly, but certainly positive profile of Hillary Schill, Randy Weingarten from the American Federation of Teachers. That's a problem. He shouldn't be doing that. He shouldn't be giving her such positive pub and helping her sell her book. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for being part of Halitics. Enjoy the rest of your day.